something that had felt like someone had like hit me in my low spine with a baseball bat. I had no idea what had happened. Thank God I had the catches up. So it caught the barbell, but I collapsed to the floor, took a couple deep breaths, and then tried to move, and there was no movement.
What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. The purpose of this show is to share stories of hardship and victory as an encouragement for those in the middle of their own hard thing. Because we know hardship produces perseverance, which produces character, which ultimately produces hope.
Today's guest is Lindy Barber. Lindy is a former CrossFit Games athlete and currently a personal trainer in New York City. Lindy talks about breaking her back in her first professional CrossFit season and how she was able to rebuild and make the CrossFit Games just 2 years later. If you enjoy the show, please don't forget to subscribe and make sure to leave a review so more people can be encouraged by the stories we share. Now here's the conversation with Lindy Barber. All right, Lindy, you are on the Do Hard Things podcast, and I'm super excited to have you, and would love to let our listeners know a little bit more about you. And the way I like to ask that is when people ask you what you do, how do you answer that question?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here to chat with you as well. When thinking about what do you do, I have thought about this question a lot. And I feel like for me, it's very different between what do you do and who are you? What do I do is I believe that I am a fitness professional and have been for many years. Have been essentially for my entire life. So I grew up playing sports. I've been involved in a whole bunch of sports. I played professional sport. I played soccer in college, and then I transitioned into a sport called CrossFit, stayed in CrossFit, became a professional CrossFitter. And now I've transitioned out of being a professional CrossFitter. And I now am a fitness professional in taking care of other people's bodies and personal training them and doing group fitness classes. And I'm a fitness manager at a gym. So I have been in the fitness realm for a very long time. Yeah. But I also kind of like to combo that with coming out of the fitness professional in myself, in my own journey, my own career lane, switching that into my focus of fitness for other people is just essentially taking care of other people. So I help to take care of other people. I help to make them feel better about themselves. I help them to lead better, more well-rounded lives. And I do that through a fitness setting, but I hope to also do that through gaining their friendship and getting their confidence up and helping them to see themselves as a full, well-rounded human being and to see a better quality of life overall. And I currently love and probably will continue forever to choose to do that through a fitness realm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was it always what you wanted to pursue, a life involved in the fitness industry, or just did you have other plans and then this is where you ended up?
I knew from a really early age that the world of fitness was where I needed to be. I knew myself. I personally needed fitness for my own mental health and clarity, and it made me feel better. And emotionally, going outside and going for a run made me feel better about my stress levels. And I learned that about myself so early that when I started to even getting into high school and you have to think about where you want to go, I was thinking like physical therapy, maybe fitness training, maybe strength and conditioning. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go yet, but I knew it was going to be in the fitness umbrella. And that kind of got narrowed down as I got into school, into the University of Dayton, which is where I went to college, and realized that the science of like physics and physical therapy was not where my love of fitness went. It was more of the connecting and interacting with people who wanted to better themselves through fitness. And so that's why I led a little bit more towards the exercise science, which is what I ended up graduating in. While I was in school, I was playing soccer. And when I got out of soccer, or when I stopped playing soccer, I ended up working at our recplex and doing group fitness and working with personal training there. I got a whole bunch of personal training and group fitness certifications. It was just I always loved it. I always loved movement. My parents would describe me as like into absolutely everything. Anything I could get my hands on, I needed to be moving. I constantly was like up and touching things and walking around and needed to like be walking outside. So it's just, I've always been an active physical human being, and that's never stopped. And I can't imagine it stopping in any realm. So it's just kind of led me through the fitness world in many different areas.
Yeah. So you said when you were younger, you learned about yourself that like running was almost this like outlet for you. And then you said, and then in high school. So before high school is what you're talking about. How were you so like, it sounds mature to like be mindful of what you needed to like reset? Because I was not thinking that way as a like junior higher. What do I need right now? You know, I was just like trying to survive.
Yeah.
So, like, how did you get to a point to be that thoughtful?
Also, to be totally fair, it was taught to me through my father, who recognized this about me very early. So my dad, I was in soccer my whole life. I was in a whole bunch of sports. Soccer was my main focus. He was a coach in soccer, and he happened to coach a lot of my teams or was around a lot, and literally could tell, because I am traditionally bubbly, energetic, personable, easygoing kind of personality. So if I would come home from school, literally 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and would be like annoyed about a test, or like me and a friend got in a fight, or like whatever, he would literally be like, I need you to go outside of the backyard, and like I need you to go like kick some soccer balls, or just go for a 10-minute run. Like, don't come and talk to me until you're going to go do this physical thing, and then come back to me and we will chat about this thing. And I would be like super annoyed and be like, oh my God, whatever. But I would go for that 10 to 20 minute run, or I would go outside and practice my skills, and then I calmed down. And then I was like, okay, like the world is better. So he kind of led me on to this understanding that for me, that was just like a little bit of an emotional outlet of sometimes I couldn't figure out why my emotions were going haywire, but fitness was something that calmed me down and brought me back to my own center and allowed me to feel myself again, no matter what the situation was.
So take me back to post-college, because a good chunk of your, adult career so far was as a CrossFit athlete, but
Correct.
It sounds like you got into it. Maybe it was during college, but it sounds like mostly after. Why?
Yeah, totally. Great question. So I played D1 soccer in college. Yeah. I played on my varsity team for 2 years, and then I played on the club team for my second 2 years. After I was done with soccer was where I thought my professional fitness career was going to go. I really wanted to continue to play soccer after college, but also quickly learned in college that I wasn't actually quite good enough to go continually in that professional realm. So saw the ending coming. Yeah. But I still had a competitive drive. I still felt like I wanted to be involved in some kind of competitive sport of some sort. I did not know where that was going to land. As a soccer player, I immediately assumed it was going to be marathon runs or triathlons or something that was really long distance. Yeah. But I also learned in my college career, it was the first time that I ever really lifted weights. I had done some strength training programs in high school just to like continue to gain a little bit of strength, but nothing really serious. So college was the first place that I actually lifted a barbell, learned how to back squat, had a strength coach, built numbers, and found out that that was something that I just thought was very, very cool. I just really liked that aspect. So I wanted to continue that weightlifting in my life. My sister-in-law at the time, I had no idea about CrossFit. I did not know what it was when I finished playing soccer. I didn't even know it was a thing. My sister-in-law was a member of a gym back home where I'm from, which is in Kentucky, that transformed into a CrossFit gym. And she knew that I was in this weird wanting to do something land. So she invited me to come and do this CrossFit workout with her at the gym that she was at. I did the CrossFit workout. I thought I was fit, and then was completely destroyed from this workout.
That's like everybody's experience.
Yes. It's hard. Man. I mean, it's such a wake-up call in a totally different way. Like I was a fit in one specific certain way, but then this made me so sore, and it was so challenging and so hard that then I continued to go to this CrossFit gym once I got home for the summer and thought it was really awesome. And then when I went back to school, so I went to go get my master's degree. When I went back to University of Dayton, I found a CrossFit gym in the area, started to continue to go there, learned within those couple of months that people then told me, well, this is a thing you can be competitive in. There are actual competitions. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, sign me up. Like, I'm good. Like, that's all I need to do. That's all I want to do. And then it started to snowball from there.
Okay. So because you could be a professional and be competitive in it, it sounds like that was the reason you were able to stick with it for so long, or were there other reasons that you stuck with it for such a long time?
I didn't actually know that you could be a professional CrossFitter at the time. I'm not even sure. And this was in 2010. So I'm not sure at that time that a professional, quote unquote, a professional CrossFitter even existed yet. The sport wasn't quite big enough for that. The first Open was in 2011. Mm-hmm. So I did participate in the first Open, but just the fact that there was even a thread of competition, even if it was like within the gym itself. And the fact that I could compete against other people and get that kind of competitive nature out was the initial thing that sold me, until 2011, which was the first CrossFit Open. And I tried to participate and then ended up having a really big injury, which then essentially took that competition away from me and made me realize that this aspect of competition and this aspect of fitness for me in my life could end at any second. And then I learned and gained a full new appreciation for my own personal fitness. It was something that I had always had. It was something that I was always fit. I could always go for a run. I was an athletic human being. I could always just wake up and go fitness. And it was something. And then I learned that I took for granted every single day and put too much pressure on. And then I had this injury, which basically took it away from me. And then I started to appreciate being able to fitness and got this whole new mindset of how fitness can enhance my life in other ways. And I get to compete. So like, it's the best of both worlds that allowed me to want to keep doing it. I'm not sure that if I hadn't had this injury, that I would have been as successful in the sport and become the professional CrossFitter that I did, because it changed my mindset about how I approached my aspect to my fitness, because it was something that got taken away from me in an instant.
So you stuck with it for a long time, and then you relatively recently called it quits. What was that like to like walk away from what had been your career for a while?
Yeah, it was a really difficult decision. It was not on a whim. It was not a very easy decision. I had thought about walking away in 2015 and then got pulled back in, and then thought about again walking away at the end of the 2015 season, and then just wasn't quite done yet. And then went through a couple more years of competing in 16 and 17. It was the transition in 2017, the transition that I was feeling not only physically in my body, but the, again, mental aspect that I was bringing into my training, going from 2017 into 2018, and how it was starting to feel more mentally and physically of a burden and a taxing on my body, as opposed to this thing that I couldn't wait to go do the next day. And when I started to feel that, obviously everyone has those days, and that 100% happens often. But for myself, when it was happening more often than it ever had before in my entire career, that was when I started to realize that it was time for me to really take a look at what I was doing and make sure it was something that I truly wanted to still be doing, as opposed to the thing that I just had to do because it was who I was and what I did. So it took me a while to allow myself the acceptance of, it's okay. Like, I don't have to continue to be a CrossFitter until they push me out. Like, I get to make that decision on my own when I am ready to not be a professional athlete anymore. And I can make that decision to my own accord without someone else having to tell me, like, it's time for you to come out. And it was still really hard. Like, I finished the 2018 season, cried a lot when I said goodbye. Like, when I made the announcement at the games that it was my last year, it was a hard decision. And I think it was more emotional for me just because I knew that I still loved it so much, but it wasn't good for me mentally, physically, emotionally to continue on in the sport at the rate that I was. It was just the right time.
Yeah. So all the pros and cons, and made a hard decision.
It was a very hard decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, truthfully, every athlete, no matter the level, has that day where they're like, I'm done. Yeah. And, it's this shift of identity almost that makes it really challenging. It's like, well, who am I after all of this that I've, poured my blood, sweat, and tears into? For everybody that comes at a different time. Like for me, it was in college. For you, it was, 5 years ago. Just a hard thing to let go.
It's really hard. And you can tell yourself, and I can only speak from my own experience. And when I say myself, I told myself 100,000 times while I was competing that, like, I wasn't Lindy Barber, the CrossFit athlete. I was Lindy Barber, the human that does CrossFit. But then as soon as you are no longer Lindy Barber, the CrossFit athlete, it's very hard to you internally to understand, but then where do I go? Like now what do I do? My life for 4 years was quite literally absolutely nothing but wake up, train, eat, sleep, repeat for 4 straight years. There was no thought in my mind other than how is this day going to enhance the next competition that I have? How am I going to be better today for the next time that I compete? And then all of a sudden that competition is over and you wake up, and then what? Like, what am I doing with my day now? Like what I do, I just work out for 8 hours because that's all I know how to do. Like I don't, and my husband calls it like the detox that I had to take from 2 4-hour sessions a day down to 2 2-hour sessions, down to like a 1 2-hour session. Like it was an actual detox off of the amount of exercising and putting pressure on yourself and feeling bad about your workout scores. Like it was a very tough, and still, I mean, honestly, still is to this day, transition away from being an athlete in every single aspect of your life. And then now trying to figure out, what do I really like to eat? What do I actually like to do on the weekends? How much do I actually like to exercise? What kind of exercise actually makes me feel the best, as opposed to learning how to ignore all of those things and just put your focus on one solitary thing. And I think that it's not just CrossFit. Like I have full belief that that's every professional sport that's out there, and going through it myself as a CrossFitter. Every single time that I see this person has retired or this is person's last year, I immediately like have so much empathy for them, because I feel like I know a piece of what's coming for them. You know, like I understand how hard this decision is going to be for them and how hard it is for them to even put it out there that they're retiring from the sport. And the thought that they think that they're going to love all this freedom, but then all of a sudden you have all this freedom and you have no idea what to do with it. It's just like, I have a small, tiny understanding of what some of these athletes are going through. And I always feel for them and just like want to give them a hug and be like, I get it. Like, it's really hard right now. But you have to try to learn, and it takes a long time to trust what you truly want and not what you've put these expectations on for so long.
That's good. All right. Well, let's transition into like the signature question, the one this podcast is built on, which is what is the hardest thing in your life that you wouldn't take back?
After that injury that I was talking about that I sustained, and making the choice to ignore all medical peer advice to give up on what I wanted and to do it anyway. I was young. I mean, I was 20, had just turned 22, and was being told by all the people essentially that I respected, including doctors and people that were way smarter than me at the time, or that I thought were way smarter than me at the time. And all of the advice from some of my best friends and members of my family that it's okay, just give up on it. And the hard thing was learning to trust myself and what I felt like I could do and what I wanted to do and what I needed to do. But instead of listening to their advice, but by going through that experience and learning in that moment to continually trust myself, has allowed me to be successful in so many other realms of my life, and knowing that I truly do know what's best for me, and being able to block out other people's infiltrating visions.
So take us back to the injury and describe like what it was in case people aren't familiar with your story. And then after you do that, I've got a couple other follow-up questions.
Yeah, of course. So I was back squatting. This is in the beginning of my CrossFit life and beginning of my lifting life. I didn't know much about a ton of it. I was the typical person who was lifting in the gym alone by herself, watching YouTube, trying to figure out what I was doing and what I needed to be doing. So I was not necessarily doing all things correctly, and I did not have people watching me. I had always had a little bit of back pain in my life, but it was nothing that, for what I understood, was alarming. It was just a little bit of back pain. My back kind of hurt. It hurt after some soccer games. It hurt after some people hit me, but it was just my normal life until I was back squatting. I was in the middle of the Open, that 2011 Open that I was talking about earlier. And I was in the middle of back squatting, got to the bottom of one of the reps and collapsed underneath the bar because I felt a snap in my lower back, something that had felt like someone had like hit me in my low spine with a baseball bat. I had no idea what had happened. Thank God I had the catches up, so it caught the barbell, but I collapsed to the floor, took a couple deep breaths, and then tried to move, and there was no movement. I could not sit up. I was in so much excruciating pain. I couldn't walk. I had to get somebody to carry me out of the gym at that point. I did not know what was going on. I had never had anything like this happen in my entire life. And then it took at least 3 days. I was about to graduate at this time. I was about to graduate literally 3 weeks away from my college graduation. So I went back to my house that I shared with 5 other ladies at the time, and laid on the floor for 3 days and thought maybe it would go away. Mind you, I was still getting my degree in exercise science. So I was able to deduct that clearly this is like a bone muscle issue. It seems like it's in spasm, but hopefully it'll just go away. I've never had a back injury. Maybe I just pulled a muscle really terribly. That was not the case. I finally found someone who got me to a chiropractor. Once the pain had subsided a little bit, I thought my right hip had popped out of place, and I was just getting a lot of referred pain through my low back because that was where I was starting to feel it the most. That chiropractor refused to adjust me, refused to listen to me that it was my right hip that was out of place. He took some spinal x-rays. The conclusion from his spinal x-rays was that I had already had 2 spinal pre-existing conditions that I didn't know, which are scoliosis and spina bifida. So I was scoliosis. I was not the big S like most people think of with scoliosis. I have a C curve to the left if you look at my spine. And then I have something called I have spina bifida, which was the other pre-existing one, which basically just means that in your spine, you are born with growth plates all over your body. Those growth plates, as you grow and develop, ossify, they turn hard into bone. And for whatever reason, my body did not ossify. I did not take my L5 vertebrae, which is the biggest, lowest vertebrae of your whole spine, right above your tailbone. And it never made that growth plate into bone. So it was already a weak spot. It was essentially like another disc. If you have discs in between your spines, it was another disc that never fused into bone. So it was already a weak spot in my vertebrae itself. And then I had a C curve to the left that over time with those weak spots created something that's called spondylolisthesis, which basically means that from the big body of your vertebrae, which is the big circle piece, and then the little Lego pieces that stick off on the back, there are 2 little bridges that connect those 2. On this back squat, those 2 bridges broke through. And because of the scoliosis that I have, my whole pelvic bone shifted to the right side, moving with that scoliosis, which is why I had all that pain in my right hip. So that's where it was getting referred to. But so basically my L5 vertebrae underneath the scoliosis, and because of the spina bifida, broke on either side and was now in 3 pieces as opposed to one big solid structure, which is the way it was supposed to be. So it shifted away from itself, twisted on itself, and then my muscles around it spasmed so hard to try to keep it into place. That's what caused the not allowance of walking or moving or being able to like get up off the floor. That was his basic explanation to me. And I'm 22 at the time. And I was like, cool. So now what? Like, what do I do with this situation? And this was in the middle of the Open. This was the first time that I was competing for the first time in this new sport that I had found and loved and now wanted to be a part of. And obviously it was 6 weeks at the time. And I was 3 weeks in. This was the start of the 4th week is when this injury happened. And I found out all this information. I did not complete the Open clearly because I wasn't able to. And then went home back to Kentucky, found another spinal doctor to get an MRI to confirm everything that he had said that was on the x-ray. The MRI confirmed all 3, the spondylolisthesis, the spina bifida, and the scoliosis, and then also told me that I was bulging in my L4 and L5 discs, so the 2 discs that were on either side, which was probably caused from life, but also this back squat itself. So I had a lot going on all of a sudden. And then I had to go, they had me wear a bone stimulator and go through some movements just to try to heal and calm down that spine itself. Over the summer, wearing the bone stimulator, there was no natural bone healing. So it did not fuse back together naturally. We were able to decrease the grade of separation. So it went from like a 3 down to a 1. They got closer together, but they never actually fused back. So by the end of this 4-month situation, they took another MRI and another x-ray to see where the bones were. And they had essentially fused off the ends. So where they had broken was where they were hoping they would fuse back together because we got to get in there really quickly, but they didn't. They fused away from one another. So it solidified the break on either side of that L5 instead of fusing them back together, which then they gave me the option of we could do surgery. Like we could now physically push them together, put screws in them and put rods on either side to try to protect that spine. But because of the spina bifida and my body not naturally healing in the way it was quote unquote supposed to in any way, they did not have confidence that my body would accept the screws and that they wouldn't have to go back in and take them out or cause more pain. So I didn't want them to go dig around in there for no reason with no confidence that it would help, which then allowed well, what do I do now? Well, I think, what should I do? What is the safest thing? Am I at risk for paralysis? Like, what is the deal? And that doctor quite literally told me, you could go the rest of your life and have a little bit of pain, but be able to live and be okay. Or you could step off the curb wrong tomorrow and hit your hips in the wrong direction. And potentially that bone could re-break and might hit the spinal cord. So the thing is that you just need to like live your life and be careful. And I was like, cool, great, thanks. Neat.
Yeah.
So now I'm like 22, been given this ultimatum of, we have no idea what's really going to happen. We can't predict one way or the other. Your body's doing what your body's doing, and you ultimately get to make this decision. We recommend as doctors that you'll never squat again. Lifting is not for you. You shouldn't be putting heavy things over your head. You're going to be putting yourself at risk that's unnecessary. Don't deadlift. Just do things like go for long runs, go for long walks. Heavy lifting is nothing that you should do anymore, which I appreciate from the standpoint that they're just trying to put my health and safety at the forefront. And that's what they have to say. And they can't tell me, yes, go back squat 300 pounds. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
But I also was an exercise science student, as I mentioned at this time, and knew that doing no strength training around the broken bone made sense. Like I needed to strengthen those muscles. I needed to do something naturally to protect them if a surgery was not going to be that option. So then I had this crazy debate in my head of, what do I do? Like, people are telling me that it's too risky, but I don't believe that it's too risky. I have to do something. So that was the ultimate injury and decision that I was faced with after this entire saga.
Yeah. So for the like 4 months, I think
it was about 4 months that I wore the bone stimulator.
Were you like in constant pain, or had it kind of subsided and you were just stuck in this kind of like lack of mobility for that time?
I still to this day have some level of pain every single day. So it's on a scale somewhere from 1 that it like doesn't really bother me all that much to some days I wake up and it just kind of depends on what the previous day was or how I slept, that there's some scale of pain. And I believe that will be that way for the rest of my life. But at this time, there was definitely some scale of pain. It was a little bit higher every day as I tried to figure it out, but it wasn't excruciating. It wasn't affecting, other than my brain, my daily living at the time.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds terrible. I mean, I've like tweaked my back a few times and I like don't want to do anything for a very long time. And because it's just like totally, it affects everything. And 100%. Like you can't avoid it. So I'm really curious about the debate that existed in your head between trusting all the wise counsel of doctors and chiropractors, all the like experts, and then like listening to, what your body was telling you and believing in your ability to like, that sounds nice. Like I was able to trust myself, but like, just take me, like, I don't even know how to ask it. I just want to like go into your brain and hear, how did that debate actually play out? Like between expert advice and 22-year-old self?
Yeah, it took a long time. I mean, so that when I first came back after I got the release of go live your life, see what happens, this is what we decide. Yeah. That was about November of 2011. After this was March of 2011, basically when this all happened, or when it started to all happen. And then I had this decision of, well, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to continue to work? I was now working in a CrossFit gym at this time, but was mopping the floors and cleaning the barbells. Like I wasn't coaching. I wasn't active. I wasn't fitnessing. I was just I was already in there and wanted to continue to be in there. So I decided the only first decision that I had to make was, am I going to try to continue CrossFit or am I completely cutting it out? And I wholeheartedly believe that with the knowledge that I had about exercise in general, just from the degree that I had just gotten, that like I said earlier, there's no way that doing nothing made any sense to me. I was like, I need to do something to strengthen the muscles that surround this spine. Is it going to be CrossFit? I don't know. We're going to try. We're going to figure it out. So I started very, very slowly incorporating anything that I knew that I could do to strengthen whatever those low back muscles are. At the time then was very basic core movements in general, like a plank. I was doing some push-ups. It was doing nothing that had anything dynamic. There was no kipping pull-ups. There was no jumping yet. There was no like heavy back squatting, like nothing like that. It was literally just movements for my body, holding my spine in a stable position and trying to get it to be able to hold that stable position through different ranges of motion, overhead, side to side, laterally, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Then once it was a slow process of, I can do that. that feels okay. I woke up the next morning, I'm not in too much pain. Now I'm going to try this next level. Now I'm going to do a front squat. Now I'm going to press dumbbells overhead. Now I'm going to hinge a little bit and see what I can do. And there was just this very slow build and burn of adding one movement at a time, or 2 or 3 extra reps, or 5 or 10 extra pounds, that I started to build in myself confidence, not only in I can do this in some form, but I can do it safely at the same time. And don't get me wrong, there was lots of days once I got more confident in trying to do different styles of workouts that I pushed it too hard and had to learn the difference between that was not a smart move and you got a little too excited about this, or you shouldn't have added the 40 pounds. Like, you felt strong that day, but you need to be a little bit more careful. And I paid for that. And then I would take a step back and I would be in way more pain and would have to take 2 or 3 days off. So it was very, very much a game of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But it was more so along that way that, like I was saying earlier, I just started to gain the confidence, not only just in my physical ability, but that I can do this. And all I have to do is believe in myself that I can do it, and trust each day how I feel, and learn to wake up, assess what my pain level is that day and what makes sense for me to do in the gym and how to approach that gym day. Some days will be the day that I can do the CrossFit workout of the day that's on the board, because it's movements that I have done and have managed and have gained confidence in. And there's another day that I'm going to come to the gym and it's overhead squats and kipping pull-ups. And I have to take that step back to understand that is not the workout for me today. It's not feeling, I will do strict banded pull-ups and I will do I will do front squats with a kettlebell instead. So like, I had to learn that humility at the same time very early, that just because it's on the board, I had to reel back my competitive nature in a way that I could be competitive with getting myself healthier and stronger, as opposed to immediately trying to get put back into the world of competing against other people.
Yeah. So it's like trying to maintain the long-term goal rather than the short-term like thrill of competition for the given day.
Exactly. And that was the hard, but appreciation that I gained for then understanding that just because it's strict banded pull-ups and kettlebell goblet squats and not overhead squats and kipping pull-ups, I am still here in the gym and I am still squatting and I am still doing pull-ups when they told me this is something I would never do. And remember when I was in so much pain that I couldn't even walk myself to my house, and now I get to be here and in the gym again. So I got to learn and love that appreciation a little bit more, which is what changed my mindset about having to beat everyone and having to be the best, and learning to just be very thankful and grateful that I still have a body that can handle any bit of this exercise that I still loved and needed to do.
Yeah, that's a great word for it, being grateful. I was curious, like in that process of, bit by bit, step by step, growing in your strength and confidence, like, did you have days or seasons or you were afraid? Like, I'm wondering if that doctor's words of you could just step off the curb and it could creep back into your mind, or if you like really were, the confidence was enough to like set that aside at any point. Like, did you have days where you were afraid that it could all just like go?
Absolutely. Through my entire career. And that wasn't even just the first 6 months back in, or the first competition that I had back. That thought of don't push it so much to ruin all of this was there the entire time. And in reality, like what I was talking about earlier, in 2017, when I started to feel not only the mental fatigue of showing up the end of 2017 going into 2018, when I started to feel that mental fatigue of showing up every single day for those 8 hours of training, I was also having many more what I always considered to be just flare-ups in my back. So like situations or days of training that my back just didn't love it as much, which then I would have to take 2 or 3 days off and not do those 8-hour days of training. But I was having more of those. And that immediately thought, even this is now 6-7 years later, that thought immediately came back in. Like, are you still doing the right thing to be able to pick up your grandkids later on in life? Like what I never wanted to do was push CrossFit or my fitness or any level of lifting so much that I then ruined whatever the quality of my life would be later on when I decided to not be a CrossFitter anymore. And that question started to come back a lot more at the end of 2017 and going into 2018, just because I was feeling my back more than I ever had previously throughout my CrossFit competition as a whole. And that was part of my decision that it's kind of, your muscles have their own minds and they will tell you what they need. It was giving me warning signs. It was kind of like, hey, like we're going to keep throwing this little like pain days at you because we're getting tired and we're getting fatigued. And that's just also a nature of the sport of CrossFit and how every year you can lift more and do more and go faster and do more volume. But my body wasn't loving that many years of that kind of intensity. So it started and was always kind of there in the beginning right away, more so every single day, and then turned into guiding light to the decision as to how long I really want to do this and what is the fine line of pushing that. And that's ultimately that same exact question is where helped to guide my decision to get out of the sport of CrossFit specifically, is because I was still unwilling to push it that far to affect the quality of my life later on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was probably a wise choice because there's a lot of life left for you, hopefully.
Exactly.
Right? So
yes, exactly.
Did you, in the middle of it or now, wonder what you could have done or how far what you could have achieved if you didn't have this limiting factor? Or was that never really a consideration? Like you just, this is who you are and there's circumstances that had been dealt to you.
I definitely can't say I never thought about it, because when I competed as an individual, which was in 14, I missed the games, but I was an individual at the games in 2013 and 2015. In 2013, I just got there and was like the happiest kid at Disneyland. I could not believe that I was on the floor. Like I couldn't have cared less, really. I just wanted to keep competing. Yeah. But then of course, when you're a competitive human, and then I got there and realized, oh, I can be here. I have won some workouts. Like I can actually do this. Then the competitive nature creeps in and I had to be back. Then I couldn't just like accept this as a one-time thing. Let's move on with my life. Then I wanted to keep competing. In 2015, when I went back, I still had that same nostalgia of really excited. I can't believe that I'm here. But my mindset had shifted to I've been here before. And now I want to compete.
Yeah.
That year at the games, it was a very, very heavy loaded year. That was the year that we had Murph on the very first day in that hot heat. And then we had really heavy DT. And then we had like really heavy thrusters and we had a yoke carry. So there was just a ton of really heavy weight in that games, appropriately, as it had gotten increasingly more difficult as the years go on, as it should and needs to, because athletes get better. But me personally at that games was having such a hard time with the aggressive amount of volume and posterior chain work and all the heavy deadlifts and heavy lifting and all the overhead squats and all these things that were putting so much pressure on my spine itself, that I 100% believe if I didn't have the limitations that I had in my training leading into it, that I would have been able to do much better, which it is what it was. And I was able to be there and I was able to compete at all. So like, that's cool. But it still gave me a little bit of like, if I didn't have, like, if I could have just trained like a normal person that didn't have a broken back this last year, I wonder what I could have achieved.
Yeah.
But really in that games was the only time that really crept in at that point. And it was more of a competitor's frustration than it was like an, oh, pity me, because I was still happy to be there. I never in my head thought that I could independently win the games as an individual. I knew I had limitations, and I knew there were some things that like I told you, I was unwilling to risk. Like I'm not going to go ham on some GHD sit-ups and push my bulging discs into herniation. Like I'm just not going to do that. So I knew that I had those limitations, that I would never win the games as an individual. But I did wish in some realms, in some workouts, that I didn't have this limitation, to see what I could actually be made of without having to pull back because of that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I can imagine that'd be really difficult as a competitive person, like can't give it everything I want to give it, and wishing that you could. But it sounds like along the way, you made a lot of wise decisions. And I'm sure right now you don't regret any of those decisions.
No, absolutely not. And I went from, at the end of 2015, I decided to transition into a team setting. So I stepped away from individual. And that was the first time that I thought that I might retire, quote unquote, from training, because the experience that I had at the 2015 games and the amount of pain that I was in at the end of it, I was like, this is not the smart move for me to be able to just continue to lift against these ladies who are incredible and super strong, but when I have this limitation. But I knew that I hoped that I could transition into team and then be able to share the load, so that I could still do and compete and do the sport that I love to do and didn't want to give up, but then be able to share it with other people. And I personally don't have to do 100 overhead squats. I just get to do 20, and then they get to help me out with them. So it was, for me at the time, was more of a win-win.
Yeah.
And then I ended up on the best team, and it was the best experience, and I was able to keep going. But I absolutely don't regret not one of these decisions. Do I look back and wish I would have done it differently in my sport? Like, I'm
Yeah.
super happy with the career that I took. And I think, shockingly, I was able to make all of the right decisions along the way that led me into the success that I had, and to be able to still feel the appreciation for the sport as I did. Like, I never developed hard feelings. It never created like animosity in me in any way, shape, or form. Like, I'm still very happy for the entire career that I had, and would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's awesome. That could very easily have gone many different directions, I'm sure. So for everybody, like, there are a lot of people that are, aspiring to be CrossFit athletes. There are a lot of people who are just, pushing their bodies really far for different pursuits. And like, what advice do you have for somebody who doesn't have the limitation right now, and maybe thinks they're a little bit invincible as they continue to try to push the limits? Like, what wise words do you have?
Try to learn some patience, especially if you are someone who's starting out. I am a huge component and absolutely love when people set really big goals for themselves. I think it's great. I think we should all have things that we ultimately strive for, but learning, as cliche as it sounds, the learning to love the process, the knowing that every single day that you put in work, no matter what that work is, whether that work is just a run or just a lift or a rest day that's necessary, all of it builds towards whatever that goal is. And try to be patient in the process itself. Like, no one, unless you have a specific deadline for some specific reason, there are so many different ways to get better towards whatever that big goal is, not only just in the gym, but like we talked about earlier, a little bit in your outside life, making sure that you have good mental clarity, make sure that you take days away from the gym, that you feel emotionally excited about going into the gym. Try to just slow and be patient in the whole process, and not get so wrapped up in every single day has to be this 2 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps, 17 steps forward, that every day has its own purpose and its own meaning and its own need into the overall journey. And relax in the fact that every single day, no matter what you feel like you are approaching, is still a step in the right direction towards your ultimate goal that you are leading towards and trying to work towards.
Mm-hmm. No, it's good. And it's good to apply to everything. Like,
a little bit of everything, yeah.
I accept the process a little bit. They're so results oriented in our culture, but I think especially as athletes or competitive people, like, you want to check the box or get to that goal. And it's going to be a process regardless of if you want it to be. And
always.
You could make it a lot longer if you push yourself too hard. So patience might actually be better and make it faster. So then people are in the middle of their own difficult season right now, who are listening, or maybe will be listening in the future. And what advice would you give to somebody who's in the middle of it right now?
Trust yourself. Like, listen to your own thoughts. Allow yourself to have the emotions that you have. Allow yourself to have the thoughts that you have. Allow yourself to give into the needs that you feel like those are, no matter what they are. We are also, and I am very guilty of this, in a culture, in a world of pick yourself up and get off the couch, and you have to go out and just be competitive and just be positive and like change your mindset. And while those things are beneficial at some points, there is also, when you are in a difficult time and you are really struggling, that trying to fake positivity or trying to fake feeling really good in your day or trying to put on that happy face for everyone else is not going to be the thing that you need. And that is okay. Like, there are going to be hard days, and you are going to feel bad on some days. And there are some days that you just don't want to talk about how wonderful and lovely and amazing the world is and how good you feel. And that's okay. And it's not a bad thing. And you're not a bad person for not immediately appreciating every single songbird that you hear and every flower that you see. Like, there's going to be days that are hard, and it's okay. And you have to go through those hard days, but allow yourself to feel those feelings, to then be able to give the appreciation for when things do happen. I was very guilty about this all the time, and I tried to all the time. I feel okay. I feel fine. Like, no, everything's great. Everything's perfect. But when you do that constantly, you're not only potentially lying to the people around you, but you start to learn it yourself. And then you feel bad about doing or needing a day or needing some time to yourself or asking for help or saying, no, I just don't feel like doing that today. So allow yourself that grace of, it's okay. You're allowed to feel your feelings. You're allowed to take time to yourself. You're allowed to not be completely positive every single day. It's all part of it. It doesn't mean that you're not getting through the hard thing. It just means that you need that day to absorb and realize what you need to take that next step forward.
Yeah. And so how do you balance that with, because another piece of advice I hear regularly is like, have good people around you. So like, how do you balance, like, if what you think you need and what you're saying yourself is counter to what people around you are saying that you trust, how do you navigate that friction?
Yeah, in reality, that's the question, right? Like, because everyone in the entire world and every realm of everything is telling you how to be, what you should do, what you need to do, what you need to eat, what you need to wear, what you need to drink, what you need to have, the emotions that you need to have. And that is the hardest thing. I personally believe is one of the hardest things, is being able to mute some of that out and really understand what the inside of you needs and what the inside of you want to eat and what do you want to wear and what do you feel like doing. And it takes time and practice to be able to block that out and be confident in your decision. And I have had so much practice with this, and I have been on both sides. I have given in 100% to the person that says, oh, you need to rest today. You shouldn't be doing that. This is a movement that you shouldn't do. And I'm like, okay, well, that's what they tell me, so I guess that's what I'll do. And then going through that process of learning, like, that was not the right decision. I feel bad about listening to that person's advice. And what I should have done was this next thing. But then allowing myself to accept that I made a decision based off of someone else's opinion, but realizing, oh, that clearly now how I feel was not the decision that I wanted to make. So then trying to take that information that I learned from that specific situation into the next time that someone tries to tell me what my decision should be, remembering, well, the last time I did this, I wasn't happy with the ultimate decision. So now I need to say, thank you for your advice. Like, I appreciate your input. I know you're just trying to be kind and helpful, but this is the decision I'm going to make. And that is a very, very hard transition to be able to do. And it's something that I still practice and still try to learn every single day is, thank you very much for your advice. I appreciate you're coming from a place of love and you're trying to help me. But that's not the decision that I want to make today. I'm going to do this instead. And there are 100% going to be some people that take that offensively, but that's not on you. That has not a reflection of you and what you need to do in your life and what is best for you. Their reaction to your desire for yourself is not your responsibility to clean up. You need to just take care of yourself and what you need to do. And I know that's a very hard thing to do, but it's definitely a skill that if you can start with very, 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 very small things, like when you go to CVS and someone's like, what do you want to drink? Instead of saying, I don't know, what do you want? Like, making a small decision for yourself. I want a iced tea, and choosing the iced tea and making that small decision can very, very gradually lead into very bigger decisions about your life. But it starts with very small things that you can control your own destiny without the input. And then it helps to lead into the confidence in yourself that you know what you want, you know what you need, you know what you desire, and allows you to make those bigger decisions later on in life.
Yeah. So, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm curious, like in your marriage, how does that play out? Because, obviously you got married because, you wanted to spend your life with him, and I'm guessing trusted him and, really respected his opinion. So I think what I'm trying to get to is we can't mute everything. And right. I think there's times where we probably aren't trustworthy for ourselves. So how would you suggest we make the decision of when it's best to listen to yourself and when it is best to listen to that trustworthy advice or person that's in your life? So for, in this example, it'd be your husband, right? How do you discern, I need to listen to outside counsel versus inside counsel in a given situation?
Yeah, totally. Great question. Not an easy answer in any way, shape, or form. I am lucky to have a husband who has been aggressively supportive. He was with me through a lot of my CrossFit career, not all of it, but he's with me through a lot of my CrossFit career and has been aggressively supportive in not only through CrossFit career, but on the other side as well, in the figuring out who Lindy is, not as a CrossFit athlete, not as a professional athlete, not as a fitness professional in that realm personally. He had a big hand in the process that I was just talking about of trying to teach me how to trust my own decision. Because when I started in CrossFit, learned that I needed to go into CrossFit, but then when you transition into the professional world, then it became, I did the workouts that were on the coach's program list. I ate the foods that were on the list.
Right.
I did the things that I was told to do to become this professional athlete. So then there was that balance of like, well, now I'm just going to do all these workouts. And then all of a sudden I had this freedom and didn't know where to go. So then was asking him, well, what workout should I do? What should I have for breakfast? Where should I go? And he was the original component of, what do you want to do? What do you feel like doing? Do you want to have pancakes for every meal? Cool, let's do that. Like, just tried to help me.
Sounds pretty good.
What do you actually want? Right.
Yeah.
But I still definitely, there are still things that if I feel that I have spent enough time, whatever that means for whatever the situation is. If I've spent 2 weeks, 24 hours, 20 minutes going over something in my head, I've given myself the time on whatever the decision is to try to sit back, relax, process it, actually sit with it for a while, not make a hasty decision in whatever way. Then if I am still conflicted, if I still feel at the end of whatever the time period that I allowed myself that I don't know for me which is the right way to go, or I'm getting very anxious about these two options, that is the time that I will need to solicit his help specifically. And he will still be like, give me all the options, give me your entire thoughts. Like, what are all your thoughts on A? What are all of your thoughts on B? Great. What is the ultimate outcome that you want to have happen from whatever this decision is? So he helps to guide me into finding what the truth is that I actually want from the situation by just narrowing me down a little bit, as opposed to ever trying to make a decision for me. But he'll be like, but okay, so what would the outcome of that situation be? What is the worst case scenario that you're thinking of in this situation? What is the best case scenario? What do you ultimately want out of whatever this decision is? And kind of helps to guide it. But it's usually when I have tried to do it on my own and still feel this like crazy conflicted, I literally can't decide, and start to get anxious about it, is when I will ask him, like, I really need your advice on something. I need to know what you think about these two decisions that I have, and solicit him immediately.
Yeah. And I think that's just a good description of the right kind of counsel and advice people should be seeking, is like, isn't somebody who's standing on a pedestal talking down, but like it comes alongside you and helps you come to, it's like teaching someone to fish rather than giving them the fish, right? It's like help you realize how to get to that decision rather than just like, well, let me make it for you, and there's totally, times that maybe we want that from somebody, but like, it's not to our benefit most of the time. Like, we need to be able to take responsibility for the decisions too, so that like what comes of it, we will, learn from. Because otherwise it's like scapegoat. He told me to, so don't need to learn from this, Yeah,
right. And I think that's like such a great way to put it, is someone that will help to guide you through your own thoughts a little bit more, to lead you to the decision that ultimately is the one that you want, but they're not deciding for you. Because if you just always have someone decide for you, you're never going to learn that skill on your own. And having someone, also, it's lovely to have someone that understands you enough to know how to lead you into those thoughts, right? Like, he knows the right questions to ask me to get me to the thing that I really want. But then that in that situation comes up again, I now have a potential skill, like you said, teaching me how to fish, to be like, oh, well, the last time I had this kind of confliction or the contradiction in my brain, this is the path that I took to find whatever the answer was. And I believe that will always grow and change, and I will always need different directions. And hopefully, our very long life that we have together, we will continue to change our communication styles, but even not just my husband, like from, our parents or our kids eventually, or whatever it will need to be, we'll try to continue to adapt that communication style in whatever way it needs, so that we can all ultimately choose the path that we need to be on, and not direct each other where we want them to go.
Right. That's good. So last question for you. What is a hard thing that you're in the middle of right now?
I am currently 9 months, 38 weeks today, pregnant, and then very much approaching the light end, or the light at the end of this very long tunnel.
It is a long tunnel. Yeah.
A very long tunnel. This is my first, so I didn't truly appreciate how long this tunnel really is. But that is definitely the hardest of all the things that I am going through right now at this moment.
I wanted to ask you, having the previous back injury, how much does that play into this being hard?
So it's really crazy that you even asked me this, because one of the only things the same spine doctor that told me you'll never squat again, this is not the life for you, good luck to you, see you later, I hope I never see you again kind of situation.
Yeah.
One of the only things he said to me as a 22-year-old in that moment was like, well, this is going to be something that, because it's not going to be fixed, is really going to affect your pregnancy. So but that's another road that we'll get to once we get there. And that, on top of him telling me that I never squat again, was one of the things that I've had in my head now for 12 years, right? I've been waiting for this pregnancy and waiting this entire 9 months to figure out what he was talking about in that moment. Because it was one of the only things that he really said to me. Anatomically, I understand what he was talking about, because your belly comes forward, you have no choice but your spine to round, you're in hyperextension. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing you physically can do about it as a pregnant woman. But I have been, quote unquote, not affected. I've been waiting for 9 months for this horrible back pain to come in that he was warning me about, in this terrible situation. But I truly 100%, now that I'm literally 2 weeks away from 40 weeks at the very end of this, believe that it was from all of the strength that I gained and built and gave to myself from all of my training through all of these years that has allowed my body to handle this crazy transformation in a very overall gentle way. It's been able to handle all of the changes. It's been able to hold the right positions. My lower back muscles, because I've developed them so much, has been able to hold me in correct positions, that I have not had that much no more back pain than I've had for the last 12 years of my life on an everyday basis. And I can't believe it. And I'm still waiting for the day, through the day. But it was just one of the only things that back doctor told me that I've just been waiting for this whole time.
Yeah. No kidding. It's crazy. He probably he didn't think of how impactful that one sentence would be, but you've remembered it, for 100%. This long, man. So our words are powerful.
Crazy. My husband and I, when this first happened, we were like, now's the time. We're going to figure out what he was talking about. Let's see what happens. We'll see it.
So did you wait to have kids because you were afraid of that? Did you really hold on to that? Or is that just something, now that you are pregnant, it came back into your mind and you're like, okay, time to find out what this guy was talking about?
I knew I was not going to have kids during my competition life. I knew I wanted to get through feeling like I was done competing before I wanted to have kids. The last couple of years, when we've been discussing it, hadn't committed to deciding to have children, it's 100% been in my head, because he at the end of the day, like you said, his words really affected me, that I can see his face saying this to me as a 22-year-old kid. And it's because it scared me. And I think it was not his intention to scare me, but just we'll see you later, good luck to you, kind of a weird situation that over the last few years, I've definitely been thinking about it. And this entire pregnancy, it's been every single month that goes by, I'm like, maybe it'll be this month. Maybe I won't be able to move this month. Maybe exercise will really hurt this month. And I've been consistently just on this steady train this entire time and have not had it come back. And I'm very thankful and grateful for that. But 100%, literally, and I talked to my husband about it a whole bunch of times, and he was the one that was like, well, whatever, if it happens, we'll deal with it. We'll figure it out. We don't need to stress about it. But this entire time, we've just been waiting. It's so wild.
Well, thank the Lord that it hasn't arisen.
Right.
And hopefully it
amazing.
doesn't. Yeah.
I hope so too.
My gosh. Well, congratulations on the pregnancy, and so far so good.
Thank you.
Kids are the best, and they just get better and better. My oldest is only 5, but from what I've been told and from my own experience, newborns are hard, and then they just keep getting better. And so it's such a fun ride, and excited for you. So, and thank you so for giving me some of your time, in the middle of a pretty wild season, to share your story. And hopefully it's an encouragement for people that are listening. I'm sure it will be. So Lindy, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. We hope you're encouraged today and have a newfound hope to persevere. Be sure to subscribe for more great episodes and conversations. And if you ever want to watch an episode, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Elite SRS. Have a blessed day.